We're in a fast 8 meta, which generally means you need a big economy to make all the comps work, which makes complete sense because the number 8 is considered very lucky, and it's supposed to give you a lot of wealth, prosperity, and success. This week so far, all the 4-cost comps are completely dominating the meta right now. We have Arcana Varus still at the top. Portal Ryze is probably one of the best +1 emblem comps you can play. And then after that, I've been loving Flex Karma Gwen Fiora because you pretty much just go to level 8, look for all the 4 costs, buy them all, and then you play them. Pretty much, you'll hit one of the things that you want out of like the 5 4 costs that this comp plays. Faerie Kalista, also very solid if you get perfect items for it, which honestly is pretty easy to do. But in this video, we will cover more so how to play around level 8 rather than focusing on all of these individual comps, because compared to last week, not too much has changed. But of course, if you need to reference something, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where you could see multiple versions of the comps at different levels. Maybe you want to see an image with one comp with an emblem, one without, or if you want to get extra details on which augments are good, what items to make, what items are mandatory to make, along with a few notes here and there along the way. But I wrote up at the top a little bit of a summary on how to approach the patch. Essentially, you could just fast state every game. Reroll, it isn't dead per se, but it definitely has taken a back seat. So what I like to do is go for an economy portal if I can. Even though every TFT comp likes having a big economy, fast 8 definitely benefits from it the most, because the difference between a 1-star 4 cost in stage 4 compared to a 2-star 4 cost is absolutely astronomical in some cases. And because he has a little execute mechanic from the Pyro buff, he either kills everything or he tickles everything. Rakan 1 or Rakan 2 in the Kalista comp either lives for the entire fight or dies in the first couple seconds. So that's why it's very, very important to have as much money as possible whenever you do a fast 8. So that's why I love the economy portal. Stuff like 3 champions, upgraded champions, gold opener, gold subscription, scuttle puddle, crab rave, and many, many more. After that, you want to take an economy or win streak augment on stage 2 depending on your board. We could take a look at some of the augments right now, and if we look at 2-1 average placement, you'll see that a bunch of trait stuff is very good, but they always do well. But for the non-trait augments, Tiniest Titan, Upward Mobility, Going Long, Risky Moves, Slammin' Plus, Precise Planning, Epic, what's the pattern you noticed so far? They all give a lot of experience or gold. The only exception to this for non-trait stuff is At What Cost, but this is a great win streaking augment, so it kind of goes in line with what I'm saying here. In most of my games, I typically do not roll until I get to level 8. The only exceptions are if you have a lot of pairs on stage 3, you could roll maybe 5 to 10 gold to hit a couple upgrades and win streak in stage 3, or if you're on a win streak and you could do the same thing. The next most important thing to do is building items for your comp. So right now we have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 if you include Ryze main comps right now. The Frost Pyro comp and the Witchcraft Fiora comp kind of share some units with some of the comps that I mentioned already. So I'm really just looking at Varus, Kalista, Karma, and Ryze. All of these different comps require quite different items. For example, Varus really likes having double Infinity Edge, so if you're leaning into Varus, you build an Infinity Edge early. Kalista and Ryze both like the Guinsoo's Rage Blade. Obviously, Kalista is going to use it a lot better than Ryze. And then lastly, for the Karma Gwen Fiora comp, you're either going to be building frontline bruiser items such as Bloodthirster, Titans, Edge of Night, Sterak's Gauge, or you're going to be building blue buff and red buff or blue buff Morello on your Karma. So it's actually quite important to slam items early, because what ends up happening a lot is that people are going to be scouting in the early game to see what comp is going to be contested. And if you build the items for a specific comp, like if you take tier off the carousel and you build a blue buff Morello right away, people are going to know what you're going. And they might say to themselves, hey, maybe I don't go for the Karma Fiora comp because this other person's going for it. Of course, it doesn't always stop them, but I found that whenever I'm the flex player and I try to go for whatever's least contested, I do a lot worse than whenever I just slam a bunch of items in the early game, even if I'm lose streaking. Normally, I don't play like that, but I think the data kind of supports what I'm saying. All the trait augments early on from the good comps do really, really well, but that always happens, right? But I think another reason why it does especially well, because there's so many of them in the low 4s right now, is because other people are scared to go that comp after they see you with like a great start for it. For example, if someone gets Portal Crest, there's no way in hell I'm going portal myself, right? If someone gets Blaster Crest playing Varus, they're gonna outplace me almost every single time. So that's why I think slamming items right now is super important to kind of tell everyone else what you're doing, because there are a lot of players who scout actively. And if 2 people slam Infinity Edge, if the 3rd person goes for Varus, I'm not saying that they're gonna do worse every single time, but I wouldn't put my money on them doing well that game. But after you slam your items, after you build a big economy from lose streaking or win streaking in the early game, you want to roll down a ton of gold on stage 4-1 or 4-2. Depending on your portal and what augment you have, you generally want to have around 40 to 50 gold on stage 4-1 to do your roll down. If not, you wait till stage 4-2, maybe your early game econ didn't go as planned. Maybe you're on an item portal instead of an econ portal, and then just hard force whatever comp you built items for in the early game. However, that sounds a bit too easy. I've noticed a lot of good players when I watch them, they actually just buy all the 4 cost units in their shop that are somewhat relevant to their comp and just play them during stage 4. So I want to give an example for the Arcana Varus comp. We can see here that we have Tahm Kench, Varus, Rumble, Shen as like the main core of the comp. This gives you Pyro, this gives you Blaster. And we also have Hecarim for Bastion and Arcana. But Bard, Ahri, and Xerath, these 3 don't really matter too much, and oftentimes you don't even find Xerath during your stage 4 roll down. So what people like to do is play maybe like an extra Taric. Sometimes you just hit Taric 2-star for free. You already have 2 Bastion, you could just play it for the 3rd Bastion. It's going to be a very solid tank unit, because a lot of games when you roll down for specific units, in this case we're mainly looking for Tahm Kench and Varus, you're probably only going to get them 1-star in your stage 4 roll down. If we think about how much this board costs, Varus 2-star and Tahm Kench 2-star cost 12 gold each, which is 24 gold. And then if you add like a Hecarim 3 in there, we're already at 33 gold. So if you are at stage 4 and you have 40 gold to roll down with, you can only actually roll down 7 gold, which is only 3 rolls. Are you gonna hit Varus 2-star and Tahm Kench 2-star in that roll down? Of course not. You're probably gonna actually roll around like 16 of your gold and spend the rest on champions. That's why it's important to pick up a lot of random 4 costs to kind of fill those rolls. Also, let's say you get a Kalista 2 for some reason. Whenever you go for Varus, you always get your Kalista. Whenever you go for Kalista, you always get your Varus. You could kind of use them interchangeably during stage 4. I'm not saying you're gonna win every round, but if you get a 2-star, 2-stars are often gonna be better than 1-star units. And Kalista actually is easy to fit in this comp because you're already running Hecarim for Multistriker. So you could play Kalista, Hecarim, plus another Multistriker, and then run the same nonsense front line of whatever you can hit. It gets a little complicated when you play like this because you have to kind of adapt to different boards, and I can't include every picture in there because it's literally every single combination of all the 4 cost units, and sometimes mixed with 3 cost units, and sometimes mixed with 3 cost units, and even 1-star versions of the legendaries. So unless you want to memorize 50 pictures, I can't really do that to show you all how that kind of happens. But have no fear, during stage 4, if you're playing 2-star 4 cost, you're going to be winning maybe like 3 to 4, sometimes even 5 of the rounds, and then you redo your roll down on stage 5. So in stage 5, you roll to 0 again if you don't have your board. And that's the time where you kind of copy whatever's in the screenshot, because let's whip out the calculator again. If you have another 40 or 50 gold during stage 5-1, and let's say you hit 2 of your Varuses and 1 of your Tahm Kenches, well, upgrading Varus 2 and Tahm Kench 2 all of a sudden only costs 12 gold. So you have 38 gold to kind of roll for those units. Maybe you hit a Xerath, you're at 33 gold, and you could essentially afford the rest of your comp. Alternatively, if you already hit all your units, you could just decide to go level 9 and go for some legendaries or some extra units there instead. But now that I've kind of explained how to do the fast 8, let me briefly go over some of the top comps right now, as well as some of the changes I made to the meta snapshot. I updated the order of the comps to 1-trick right now. I especially like the Flex Karma Gwen Fiora comp, because I feel like I could always play around whatever I hit on stage 4, because you generally always hit because when you go for this comp, in the budget version at least, you're going for 5 different 4 cost units, and there's always a unit of these that I hit 2-star during that point in the game, and then I try to play around them at that point. Arcana Varus is the number 2 because it's the best comp, but I find that too many people go for this. There are always 3 Varus players in my games, and I don't want to be the 4th one unless I built an Infinity Edge in the first seconds of the game. And then Faerie Kalista is very solid. If I have a Rage Blade at the start, I'll just build it and go for it. And then Ryze Flex, I don't really like this comp too much. It definitely is playable, but some people like strawberries, some people like peaches, and Ryze is just not for me. Now onto the Exodia comps. If you ever get the chance to play these comps, you're gonna do so well, but they're pretty rare to play. I actually think Riot Games did a very good job with the Exodia comps so far in this set because they don't feel too oppressive and they don't happen every single game. But when you do hit them, it feels really nice. And this is going to be the Katarina 3-star warrior comp with +1 warrior emblem, Warwick reroll with the corrupted Vampiric Scepter, spin to win Wukong is very solid if you get perfect items on him, and if you get Wukong 3-star very easily. Chrono Karma with 6 Karma is absolutely bonkers. Reroll Hecarim. If you manage to get the 3-star of the most contested unit in the game, you should win, right? I actually love the data on Hecarim. It's way too funny to look at. Essentially, he has the best 3-star overall average placement by far, but his 3-star rate is very low. And lastly, we have Fast 9, where if all the stars align, if you get a humongous econ and get tons of 2-star legendaries during late stage 4 or early stage 5, you're going to be doing a lot of damage because 2-star Xerath with a very solid front line kills a lot of things. So if you ever get a game where you could go for one of these comps, definitely go for it. If not, I suggest one-tricking one of the comps up here, or maybe flexing between 2 of them. Maybe you could play only Arcana Varus and Faerie Kalista because Varus really likes a lot of BF swords. Kalista hates BF swords. So if you get a lot of swords, you go for Varus. If you don't get a lot of swords, you go for Kalista. That might be a nice combination to pick up. But for the Arcana Varus comp, the main core comp is going to be the top image up here. And if you ever get Blaster Emblem and can go level 9, you want to follow the second image. But you pretty much just run Arcana. You want to put your Arcana marker on Tahm Kench because you have so many active traits. I believe it gives like 460 HP with this setup here, and then once you go level 9, add in a Preserver, you get 600 health on your Tahm Kench. And then his most important items are going to be Protector's Vow and Even Shroud. Even Shroud is very good for Varus because it reduces the armor of everyone around Tahm Kench, and Varus is an area of effect champion. Then Protector's Vow has always been Tahm Kench's best items because he's a crowd control unit, so you want him to cast as quickly as possible to stun the enemy team as quickly as possible because stuns are worth much more in the earlier parts of the fights compared to later. After that, you do the double Infinity Edge build on Varus, and then you paired that off with either a Spear of Shojin or a red buff. And then if you ever get extra AP items, throw them on Xerath. If you get extra AD items, throw them on Hecarim. And you pretty much call it a day after that. The next version we have down here is with 4 Blaster. You just add in Smolder and Ezreal. If you get a +1 Blaster emblem, you put Bard back in over the Ezreal. And this is a very powerful one-shot build for Varus. Another strong thing to do is putting the Blaster emblem on your Xerath. Xerath absolutely smokes people with Blaster Emblem. It's kind of like a tailor-made trait for him. But let's go into the next comp. We have the Portal Ryze. You only play this with +1 Portal Spatula, and then you build a combination of anti-heal items such as Red Buff or Morello and ability power items on your Ryze. After that, throw tank items on whoever you have 2-star in the front, whether it be like a Nasus 2, Taric 2, Morgana 2, Diana 2, anything like that. And then in the super late game, you could item up your Nora and Yuumi. By the way, for linking Yuumi, if you have Ryze 2 with 3 items, put it on Ryze. But if you ever get Nora 2 and you have at least 2 items on Nora, I like dropping it on Nora. Obviously, you want the 3-item Nora. That'd be even better. But I find that in the super late game, Nora is going to be a better carry than your Ryze. Just make sure you have 3 mage in, so add in Nami and Galio. But this comp is really easy to play. You just hard force it if you ever get Portal Crest in the start of the game. We already looked at the augments before, where we saw that Portal was by far the best performing augment. So it's kind of like a no-brainer to kind of just hard force. By the way, one interesting thing is that both Portal Crest and Fairy Crest are much better than their crown components. We see here that on stage 2, Portal Crest is a 4.07, but Portal Crown is a 4.43. You might be wondering why that is, and that's because of the item it gives. Portal Crown gives you a Spear of Shojin, which isn't the best item on Ryze. However, on Nora, it's pretty good. However, you're not going to get a Nora in the early game, and then the data improves drastically for Portal Crown in stage 3 and 4, and that's mainly because people who are leaning into Portal get the best augment that they could ever ask for. Now onto the Fairy difference. Fairy Crest performs much better than Fairy Crown, this time both in overall average placement and in the stage 2 average placement, and that's because Fairy Crown gives a Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer is completely useless in the Fairy comp because you only care about getting 4 items. And those 4 items are 2 Rage Blades on Kalista and then 2 tank items on Rakan, one of them being a Gargoyle Stoneplate. So who's gonna hold the Giant Slayer? You don't really have anyone to hold it until maybe late game you drop it on a Morgana or Camille or something like that. But even then, it's not that great. They have better items that they could kind of build. So that's why with the Crest versus Crown example, like kind of be careful before you click on something because there might be something that's a little bit better, especially with the Fairy Crown. But Ryze is pretty easy to do, just hard force it after you get a +1. Karma, Gwen, Fiora, this is my favorite comp. I go for the bottom version first and then swap to the Preserver version later on. And that's because in the top version, Rakan is the most contested unit in the game right now. If we look at the forecast and sort by play rate, him and Tahm Kench are both at a 2.61, but Rakan's performing a little bit better at 4.26 compared to 4.31. And literally everyone's just playing Preserver, so getting Rakan 2-star is impossible. So when you look at the top version of the comp, which is the ideal comp, you have to ask yourself, who's going to be doing my tanking for me? Is it Rakan 1 and Morgana 1? No, it's not. It's going to be your Fiora and Gwen that's tanking everything. And while Fiora and Gwen do have some lifesteal, they are not main tanks by any means. That's why I like playing the Nico and Nasus package. That way these 2 units kind of tank for my Gwen and Fiora so that they could focus more on dealing damage. However, if I do get a Rakan 2 and a Morgana 2, then I swap to the Preserver version and I'd be very happy. One other crucial note about this comp is that Thieves Gloves is very good for both Fiora and Gwen, so if you get a lot of Gwen items but not a lot of Fiora items or vice versa, just build a Thieves Gloves because oftentimes we don't have enough items to build everything that we want, because we want tank items, we want Karma items, we want Gwen and Fiora items. That's 4 different units to itemize up, and 4 times 3 items, and 4 champions times 3 items is 12 items total. Yeah, you're not getting 12 items over the course of a lot of games, so build a Thieves Gloves. And another thing is, if you are prioritizing a 3rd item on a champion, prioritize Fiora and Gwen because Karma really only cares about 2 items, which is blue buff plus some sort of anti-heal item such as red or Morello. But very, very solid comp, one of my favorites to play. Actually, probably is my favorite to play right now, and it's probably the comp I'm going to be playing the most for the rest of the patch. Next comp up we have is the Faerie Kalista. Just build Rage Blades, like build a Rage Blade, people scout you, they're like, okay, I'm not gonna go for that. And while this comp did get nerfed, it still does very, very well. I lied a bit in the beginning when I said that 1-star Rakan dies really quickly. And he only dies in the non-Fairy comps. Because once you get 5 Fairy and you get the Royal Armor or whatever it's called on your Rakan plus a Stone Plate, he still lives quite a decent amount of time. Maybe like half the duration of the fight, he kind of lives that long, which is pretty good for a 1-star unit. But once you get Rakan 2 and Kalista 2, none of your team matters that much, so that's a great bonus to this comp. Just make sure you also have an Even Shroud somewhere so that you could reduce armor for your Kalista to really rip through everything. If not, build like a Last Whisper on your Kalista. It's still good even if it's not super optimal. Next, I want to cover some of the Exodia comps. So we have the Zap Attack Blitzcrank here. Not one of the Exodia comps, but just play one of the versions that you see down there. Witchcraft, Fiora, and Karma. If you get +1 Witchcraft spat, you could go for 6 or 8 Witchcraft, very powerful. Frostfire, Olaf, and Varus. Actually, I should give some attention to this comp. If you ever get Winter is Coming, Frost Crown, Frost Crest, things like that, you want to just be going for the Olaf comp because it's super, super, super powerful. Varus plus Frost is just like a match made in heaven, and all the units synergize together. Not too many people are going for Olaf, so a lot of games, what ends up happening is that you have a Varus 1-star, which is okay. You could use Hwei and Olaf as your item holders instead. For example, you could put Infinity Edge on your Olaf if he doesn't have 3 items yet, and then you could put your Spear Shojin on your Hwei or Zillion, and then play around that because Olaf carries so hard in the mid game, such as in stage 4. Assuming he's 2-star, even when he's 1-star, he's just a beast at that stage because a lot of teams don't have enough damage to kill him. And then later on, Olaf does fall off because he's like a melee unit that kind of gets blown up, and he doesn't have like a damage reduction thing such as Fiora. He doesn't dash away like a Gwen, so he kind of dies so he kind of does fall off. But then later on, you could swap all your items onto your Varus once he's 2-star, and then Varus ends up doing a lot of the carrying in the late game, especially with the Frost Emblem. Pair it with a Diana. Diana jumps to the back, AoEs everyone, doesn't quite kill them all, but then Varus casts to finish them all off. It's a very satisfying feeling. But that's like the quickest way I could tell you of why this comp works and a little bit on how to play it. If you get +1 Frost, just go for it. If you get Winter is Coming, just go for it. And you pretty much play the same board every single time. Next one up we have is Katarina Reroll. This is the first of the Exodia comps. Katarina 3-star with 6 warrior will kill everything, but there's a lot of requirements. First of all, Katarina is being taken by all the Kalista players because they run Katarina in that comp. Second of all, you want the +1 warrior emblem to get to 6 warriors. It's the only way to do it. So you need 2 different requirements for this comp. One is being able to go for 3-star 3 cost, which is very expensive to do right now. Also, if we really think about it, no one else is going for the 3 cost units right now as 3-star. I'm trying to think of what's the most popular. Yeah, it's Wukong, but people play that very, very situationally. Veigar is kind of mediocre. Jinx, they only play with the Wukong. Vex is with Veigar. And then the Ezreal Hwei Blaster comp, it is good, but most people just play Varus instead of this. So what ends up happening is that it's very difficult to hit Katarina 3 because no one else is going for 3 cost units. But I will say once you do hit this comp, you will kill everything. So it's kind of hard to lose once you get Katarina 3-star with 6 warrior. Next comp we have is the Ryze Flex. This is one of the 4 cost comps that we talked about before. It plays very similarly to the Portal Ryze, except this is what you play when you don't get Portal Spatula. Most people go for the 4 Preserver, 4 Scholar build. That's going to be the most popular version. But sometimes they go for the Arcana version if you get an early Tahm Kench 2. Which ends up happening a lot, because again, Rakan is super hard to get because everyone's going for him. You're not going to get him with 2-star in a lot of your games. Next, we have the other Exodia comp, Corrupted Vampiric Scepter Warwick. It does not matter if you have 0 Warwicks at the start of the game. If you get Corrupted Vampiric Scepter from Portable Forge or like any sort of artifact anvil, you can hard force this comp and you most likely will place very, very well. So the key point about this comp is obviously getting Warwick 3-star. You want to be following 1 cost reroll pattern, but you also have to get to 6 Vanguard, which can be a little tricky. But I found that Warwick spikes so hard when he gets to 6 Vanguard. There are a lot of games where I have Warwick 3, 4 Vanguard, and I'm losing every single round, and I'm like, what the heck is happening? But just know that it's pretty normal. Once you get to 6 Vanguard, though, no one will want to face you anymore. Just build Quicksilver and Rageblade, and he just mows through everything. I like playing him on the opposite side of the enemy tanks and the enemy carries because I want him to kill off all the weak units first and then focus on the main tank later. And there are a couple of different matchup dependent things that you do. If you're facing a Kalista or anything with high single target damage, you want to be placing him opposite side. However, if you're facing like a Karma or a Ryze, it's okay to be on the same side as them because he ends up healing up all the damage that they do. Varus, I'm kind of indifferent about. He is an area of effect champion, but I don't like Varus autoing my Warwick too much, so I try to go opposite side against Varus as well. But the main point I'm trying to make is you really want to avoid Kalista because if she ever focuses on your Warwick, he will die and he can't really heal through it. But this comp is super easy to play. Just get the Vampiric Scepter at the start. Even if you have 0 Warwicks, hard force the comp. I mean, ideally you have some of them, right? But even if you have 0, I've seen it work because the comp really is that good. Get 3-star Warwick and then get 6 Vanguard, call it a day. Next one up, we have a Spin to Win Wukong. You have to get the Spin to Win Augment and you have to kind of have some sort of lean into the Wukong. And then you also have to pair it up with the Jinx. So it's kind of hard to play because no one's ever really leaning into Wukong because the augment doesn't show up that often. I know this really only shows how often something's picked. So if we look at Spin to Win, you'll see that there are 8,000 or like almost 9,000 games on a total. Out of like 1.5 million comps, that's really not a lot, right? 8730 divided by 1532, 369. And then you divide it by 8 because there are 8 players in every game. And then you multiply it by 8 because there are 8 players in every game. You'll end up seeing it in around like 4.6% of your games, which really isn't a lot, right? So it is a very rare comp, but if you do go for it and hit it, very, very powerful. 3-star Wukong, 3-star Jinx with Spin to Win Augment. You're not going to be losing a lot of those. We can actually check to see how strong that actually is. So if we go to the Explorer tool, you get the Spin to Win Augment, you get Wukong 3-star, you get Jinx 3-star. I know it's a lot of requirements, right? But you get a 3.19 average placement. I'm actually surprised it's not higher, but it's really, really good. Add on some items, it gets even better. But yeah, essentially what I'm trying to say is that the comps are really, really good. You could also do a version with Bard. We had that version up a couple weeks ago, but sometimes you just get Bard 3 just because you're rolling for 3 costs anyways, but I prefer Jinx. Next comp up we have is Chrono Karma. This is with 6 Chrono. You go Preservers, and then you put Chrono on your Morgana. Morgana and Karma just burn everything down during the Chrono countdown. You could also combine this with an Olaf for Chrono Olaf. You don't even have to put the Chrono emblem on him, you just play an Olaf. He puts up his CC immunity, and then he goes to town on people. But essentially you just play this with the Chrono emblem, which is uncraftable, so it's a bit hard to kind of use. But if we look at the trait stats and then type in Chrono here, you'll see that it's a 3.68. That's pretty disgustingly high considering you just need 1 emblem for it. If we compare it to every other trait that only needs 1 emblem, it'll blow them out of the water. Like if we look at the stuff that's always the best, it's going to be like the 10s, you need 2 of them, and you need to hit like level 9 or 10 to get there, depending if you have Wandering Trainer or not. 9 Frost, 9 Fairy, you need 2 of them, and it's a 9 trait. 8 Witchcraft, you need 2 of them. Honeymancy, 2 of them. Multistriker, 2 of them. Arcana, I'll make the exception here. You only need 1 of them, but Arcana is more of a complementary trait rather than like a full-blown trait, but then you get like to 6 Chrono over here after the 6 Scholar. Point is, it's very, very powerful. I guess there is one thing better than it, which is the Scholar one, but the Chrono one makes a lot more sense to play in my opinion. It's not the easiest comp to play in the mid game though. In the late game it's easy, but the mid game is a bit tricky because you run a lot of bad units. So for example, Jax and Vex both kind of suck without traits to complement them. So what people end up doing is that sometimes they even only run 4 Chrono in the late game instead of 6, just to run better units. I like the 6 version a bit more, and in the mid game, having like the 4 Chrono quote-unquote power spike isn't really that much of a power spike compared to other trait breakpoints. For example, getting like 5 Eldritch in the early game and then 7 Eldritch in the mid game is super, super powerful, same with Frost. But getting like 4 Chrono even super early doesn't really do that much for your team. And it's mainly because you're running a bunch of crappy Chrono units that you don't really add traits for. The itemization can also be a bit weird. You don't have the best item holders for everything that you want. But if you can make it to the late game, get Camille with the +1 Chrono emblem, you will win a lot of games with this. The next and last Exodia comp is going to be Heckarim Reroll. We saw again in the data before, it's really, really, really rare to play. But if you do get Heckarim 3, you have a Sterix gauge on him. It works really well with the Sterix gauge augment. You pretty much just auto win. So you get a Heckarim, you get him 3-star, you get Unleash the Beast, you throw a Sterix on him, he's at a 2.65. You could even add another Sterix gauge on him, 2.59. It's very, very good. It's like one of the best comps. Out of all the Exodia comps, it might be the like one true Exodia, because I have not seen Heckarim 3 lose very often. I actually had a very funny combo on him. I got the Silvermere Dawn item with a 3-star Hecarim. That's the one where it's an artifact item, but essentially his attack speed is capped at 0.5 seconds, but Multistriker still works. So he'll attack very slowly and then he'll get a bunch of Multistriker activations and then he'll just attack very, very quickly with 165% attack damage bonus from Silvermere Dawn, and he's immune to stuns. It's absolutely bonkers. It might be the best artifact item on him. But there are a lot of ways to make Heckarim work. You just need him 3-star. It's really difficult to do. Like once you get him 3-star, all the other bonuses I talked about, such as having Unleash the Beast, having Silvermere Dawn, those come all secondary to just getting him 3-star. Only go for this if you natural a ton of Heckarims in the early game. I'd say maybe having like 6 Heckarims during stage 3, or having like 5 Heckarims with the champion duplicator on your bench that you didn't use an augment for. Those are the times where I would kind of go for this comp. But looking at the other stuff, Blaster, Ezreal, Vanguard, still solid, not the best. Ziggs reroll definitely took a step back after the nerfs. I don't know why they even nerfed it. Pyro Varus, alternative way to play Varus. If you ever get Eternal Growth early with a bunch of Shapeshifters at the start, you could just get it like a win streak game because it'll upgrade some of your units because you get additional copies of them. And you get stacks early. I've done that a couple of times recently. The comp is pretty solid. You could also pair it instead of the Varus with a Syndra 3, Cassiopeia 3 combo with Shapeshifters. It's not the best thing ever, but you gotta make do with what you get. But it's a pretty solid comp. Built different, okay-ish, not the best right now. Molten Caramel. This is one of the few playable hero augments, but even at a 4.43, it's slightly above average, technically speaking. But just get Rumble 3, decent items, it'll be okay. Multistriker Kalista, alternative way of playing Kalista. You could also do like rerolls with like Jax, Ashe. I've even done a game of Kassadin reroll recently. It's because I started the game, I think I had like 7 Kassadins on stage 2, so I just went for it. I still got 3rd despite like almost getting him really early. It's not the best, but I mean, if you get it for free, you get it for free. Horizontal Kalista, another way to play it. Sugarcraft, if you get the +1 Sugarcraft emblem, it is okay, not the best, and only play it on portals which give a ton of items. I would not just play this on like a econ portal, even if I had +1 Sugarcraft at the start of the game with Sugarcraft units. I'd pretty much only play it in like Scuttle Puddle, Crab Rave, or anything that gives like a ton of items. Jax Ashe reroll, solid comp if you hit it for free. Don't like hard force this though. Though I will say in lower ratings, this comp works really well. For some reason, reroll comps work a lot better the lower rating you are. So I guess if you are plat and below, you might be able to hard force this comp every single game. Who knows? Maybe someone try it and tell me how it goes. But as you get higher and higher, you can only play this situationally. Like if I start the game with like 5 Ashes and like 4 Jaxes on stage 2-1, maybe I'll hard force this comp as I keep getting him as the stage moves on. Next comp up we have is Eldritch. This comp didn't quite take off as I thought it would, but it's still okay to play. You go for either 3-star Syndra or you play around Nami. And then that kind of finishes off the S and A tier. We have the B tiers after that. The B tiers are playable, but they're highly situational. And since there's so many other comps to go for, just kidding. They're mainly just like the comps down here, which I would recommend most people to play. There's not too much reason to kind of go for the B tier comps. But overall, how am I going to approach the patch? I kind of did the write-up up here. Go on bunnymuffins.lol/meta to check that out. Bookmark the page, share it with a friend. It helps me out a ton. A lot of people think subscribing's the best way to support me, but it's really not. It's like sharing with friends. Maybe someone's getting into TFT a bit. That's always the best way to do it. But of course, I do appreciate any type of support that does come my way. But essentially, I'm probably just going to play Flex, Karma, Gwen, Fiora most of my games. I just love the way the comp works. The only issue with it is that it's hard to kind of signal that you're going for it. Like, if you build a blue buff, people don't respect the blue buff as much as slamming, like, Rage Blades on Kalista. Like, if I ever go for the Kalista comp and I slam a Rage Blade early, for some reason, everyone knows that I'm going Kalista, and then they don't go for it. But whenever I play Karma and I slam a blue buff early, 3 other players go for Karma and I get a little sad on the inside. I really don't know why that is though. Like the Rage Blade, people respect it, but the IE, sometimes people respect it. I'd say it's a middle ground, but then the blue buff, like no one respects the blue buff. I guess because there's so many other different carries you could go for in the Karma comp that people don't feel as bad if they get contested. Which is why I like the comp, because honestly, like I just play around whoever I get. And 1-star Karma is still decent because I just use her to apply red buff to everyone. And then hopefully either Fiora or Gwen, whoever I 2-star, does most of the carrying. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Nothing too crazy going on in this patch compared to last week, mainly because there's no B patch. There will be new updates next week. On Tuesday, they come out with the patch notes, and then Wednesday, the patch goes live, so I definitely will be looking out for everyone then. And I do plan on doing sort of like a different video than I normally do sometime this weekend, more so on like managing your mental state in TFT. So hopefully you are all looking forward to that as well. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully I see you all next time.